Are we really? Okay. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for tuning in to Our 2 Cents on Your Dollars. I'm James Enriquez.
I'm James Credo.
And we are with
Leo Chang.
Alexis Villarreal.
Okay, fellas. Stop me if you've heard this one. Honey, I'm going to buy this purse. It's a great investment.
Pause. Yeah.
Happy wife.
Do it again.
Happy wife, happy life.
Yep.
Pause.
Wait, we're not actually cutting.
No.
You had me going, so we're not cutting.
No,
okay,
no.
that's what you would say.
That's what
I tell her no every time she asks for a purse.
and she still buys it.
Of course she does.
Yes, of course.
Because it's a great investment, she says. It's going to last forever.
Okay. Well, I wasn't making any assertions as to which spouse was saying what and the gender of such.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Bitter.
Bitter. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that I purchased that I use the same exact excuse.
Well, see, the problem I have is when you say investment, like you probably should have stopped before you said the word investment, because as soon as you say investment, I got to put that investment advisor cap on and got to do some deep analysis. So please, fellas, tell me, am I wrong?
I believe so.
Am I wrong in the fact that if you use a purse or shoes or watch or any kind of collectible for that matter, it is not an investment?
I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, there is an investability in something, because they're assets that can appreciate, and there is evidence that there are some of these things do appreciate over time.
Like my baseball cards?
They can, yes. I mean, there's a popularity to it, right? And at the end of the day, it's all supply and demand, right? So if you have something, you own something that's valuable in the eye of a consumer, and there's a low supply of it, and that supply continues to shrink over time, and the consumer and demand for that product grows over time, then that product has a value, and that value can increase. And so that can increase baseball cards is a huge industry right now. There's a time frame where
I would like to interject.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I said something that you use. I don't think we use baseball cards.
Okay.
So a watch are you gonna put on your wrist?
Yes.
Or a shoulder bag, purse, crossbody, whatever you want to call it.
Fanny pack,
whatever.
It's okay that you use one.
Is it considered an investment if you're going to use it?
I mean,
you still assert your
certain things. The luxury watch brand has.
Okay.
It has.
So let me ask you, if you use it, will you get maximum resale value over a used collectible compared to a brand new?
No.
Okay.
No.
So then, are you in the habit as an investment advisor recommending to your clients an investment and purposely decreasing the value of that investment? I think you can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, obviously. No.
Case in point, checkmate.
No,
got him.
That's not. No, the idea behind earning or purchasing something, and over time, enjoying that object or that, whatever it is that you're purchasing, and it holding value or an increasing value, to me is considered an investment. You're investing in the enjoyment of it over time, and then you could sell it later on and make more money than what you originally purchased it.
I got to interject here because I feel like almost all those things are all going to go down in value,
That's not
except
true.
for mine, the one I use, which I like collecting guns, right? And so I always feel like you can use those things and they'll still hold their value. They won't diminish the same way as some of those other ones. And then again, I always think that there's certain types of guns that will not be available somewhere down the road, so they become a weird investment, I guess, as an option, but still, for the most part, they lose value.
Yeah, me, it's purely emotional. I think I sleep better at night knowing that it has some value if I had to get rid of it, or my kids might like it in the future, knowing that the history of what I'm giving them and that it still has some value. But as you guys know, I'm a sucker for history. I go to a website, you tell me the history of a watch, who wore it, where they took it, what was it used for. I mentally put a value on it, but I try my best not to look at it as an investment. It's purely for the pleasure of having it, you know. So
Okay. All right. So for a little while, let's pretend that it is an investment. Let's pretend my wife is correct and I'm wrong. Only time we're ever going to do this. If it really is an investment, we should benchmark investments. No, that is what we do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So tell me, how does a used Rolex or a used Chanel bag, how does that fare against the, I don't know, S&P 500?
Not great. Not great. I mean, it's cool because they're tracking a lot of that information because of the popularity of the handbag industry and luxury watch industry and things like that. There are websites that do have a pretty cool utility where they are tracking the secondary market value of these things. So you can go on and look for, that specific Patek Philippe watch that you love and see what the value is over time and if that value has grown. And and what they're looking at and what they're benchmarking is a secondary market. So these are watches that are being used. They're not just sitting there brand new in a box, never touched. No, people are wearing these things, and they're being repaired. They're being, things like that over time. And there's a value and there's a price that's indexed over time. But just because that asset and that collectible or that luxury, accessory doesn't grow or have the same growth capability as S&P 500, to me, doesn't necessarily make it not an investment. But from an efficiency, if we're just looking at purely efficiency and looking at what we can invest in and get the most, potential growth and value, it doesn't size up very well.
I always think it's also hard to track, right? Because there's a lot of variability in the quality of the asset, right? The collectibles, right? Some of them might be more rare, some of them might be more used. So I think that's very hard to track in regards to S&P index or other benchmarks. But again, I think they underperformed in general. Every now and then, right, you have those outliers, right? That might be rare, that might outperform, but for the most part, most of the research looks like they underperform.
yeah,
So-
go ahead.
So I'm so glad you said that, because that's the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, because there are now websites where you can buy fractional pieces of artwork, for example, and on their website, it prominently shows that their asset class is outperformed in the S&P 500 in some obscure time period, right? You know how we usually see like 1, 3, 5, 10? They chose like a 12.5% or 12.5 year time frame. I say that in jest, right? But what I think
It was
also,
it was a big grape year that year. That's why the harvest was prime.
Oh,
that year.
yeah,
That's
it was awesome. It's the varietals that came in. Okay, so there was that I noticed, and the other thing I noticed too is it was specific to what type of art.
Right.
Mhm.
It wasn't like all art. It was like this kind of art.
So they cherry picked.
No,
What?
no,
How
they
to go?
picked grapes.
Great pick. Great pick.
Well, that's what I was gonna mention. I think Lee was the one mentioning efficiencies. It's so inefficient in so many facets. In earlier podcasts where we're talking about financial planning and tax planning, a lot of these things are not available to put into specific accounts, like Roth accounts, IRA accounts, and at least for me, when I do look a little bit to see what has had great performance, it's not attainable for most people. You can buy a stock, one share of stock, and depending on the price of it, could be $20, could be $50, could be $1,000, and you could buy a basket of stocks for a very minimum amount. I just feel like for collectibles, it's not as efficient. You can't put them in certain vehicles for tax planning.
They're very
And
expensive or
very
rare.
expensive, and like Alexis says, it's very you have to cherry pick a bit. And we haven't even mentioned the tax implications of selling, and then the fees of buying and selling this if you're going to do it like a true legit investment.
Just curious, did they charge you a holding fee or some sort of monitor fee to be able to own the fractional shares of the art?
I might be misspeaking, but because I did a lot of research, but I believe that specific site, I believe their fee structure was similar to a hedge fund, where there was a hurdle rate, like a 2 and 20 type of deal. I think there might have been like 1.5 and 20, whatever. But to your point, another item that's considered collectible is alcohol. So there's also another site where you can buy bottles of wine or even casks of whiskey. Super cool.
Yeah.
And you can put your money on this website and somebody will pick the bottles of wine, or AI or an algorithm will pick it for you.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Sold.
Yeah.
Where do I invest?
Here's my money. Do you take Bitcoin? So anyway, their fee structure is something like 2.85% per year. It goes down all the way to the low price of 2.5% per year with a larger investment.
Right.
And that covers things like a bonded warehouse, insurance, because you're actually buying the wine. It's in your portfolio. They're storing it. They'll even send you a picture of your wine for a low $30 or something like that.
That'll be hanging up in the living room for sure.
Yeah. Sir, can you stand next to my bottle and
Yeah.
hold it as if I'm holding it? And will you take that picture, please? Anyway, really neat. It really
and then
is.
you can access the wine whenever you want, right? They'll send you a bottle of your wine.
No, now that you're using it now.
Now it's
You're
become
using your
utility.
investment.
Now it's utility.
Right. Well,
It
yeah.
tastes better.
So the whole point of that is 2.85% per year. That's just that much more return you have to get to compare to a similar investment.
Do they actually give you an expected return in the future?
No, but on that site they'll show you some of their successful.
They always
exits.
go up. They're always worth more later.
Up
That's
and
what
to
they
the
say.
right. Always. No, you know what? To that point, they actually have they have a quarterly report where it shows you the past quarter and the outlook. So that's pretty cool, and they're pretty transparent about it. This website that I saw, I think it was fourth quarter 2023, showed that the wines were down 6% or something or another. So
Right.
Bad grape.
How liquid is it? And I'm not talking about the actual wine.
Yes, this is another kind of liquid asset, but it's not really. It's actually e-liquid. They recommend a 7 to 10 year, which is also another, in my opinion, another notch against these types of investments. They're e-liquid. They're 7 to 10 year hold. You can sell sooner, but to get maximum value, they recommend anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And of course, it depends on the asset class, right? Because so far we've only talked about art. And we kind of briefly mentioned watches. So this might be a good time to define what are collectibles.
I mean, you mentioned it. Anything, shoes,
Gold.
purses.
Artwork.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different topics. Rare shoes. We were just looking at this earlier. There's a really cool ETF that came out about a year ago, and the ETF is made up of only luxury brands. So in that portfolio, the number one holding is actually Hermes, and then inside there they have different luxury shoe brands. They have different handbag companies, different clothing apparel companies, colognes, cigar companies, watch brands. So all those fall into these collectible type of, that like luxury type of idea and grouping.
Are those taxed the same way? Right? Are those taxed the same way as collectibles? Because they all own collectibles. Are they taxed the same way?
What do you mean? Like each individual thing that you own?
I think we talked about, right,
Is the ETF.
The ETF.
No, the ETF owns the brands. So they own the companies. So like they own, like Nike is in the stock. So Nike's in there. Louis Vuitton is in there. That's what makes up the ETF.
So they're different than owning the specific product.
Right, it's very different.
Collectible.
Yeah,
Right, very different.
You mentioned earlier about we haven't talked about the taxation. We can talk a little bit about the taxation.
Yeah, I think Alexis was mentioning earlier that it's 28% for collectibles, which is a significant amount when you're comparing it to long-term capital gains, which could be as low as 0 for some people. So it's definitely higher.
And there's no tax shelter either, right? Well, for the most part, it doesn't seem like you can put these in. I was in my research. I was I was shocked at seeing that gold and silver ETFs were also taxed at the 28% tax rate. I was always kind of under the impression that since it's an ETF, it's just kind of tracking the spot price. It's not actually going to be taxed at the 28%. That's going to be a interesting conversation for everybody that owns that.
Yeah. Okay. So this was probably more for Leo.
Yeah.
So we say, all right. So we've all heard this throughout our career, right? My primary residence is great investment. What do you normally say to that? I know what you say. I'm setting him up.
It's really not.
So why is this different, sir?
In the sense of what? The thing to me is that there's so many ancillary expenses that go into taking care and keeping up with your primary resident. You could purchase a luxury watch and keep it stored appropriately. You're not spending anything on it on a regular basis to keep it in the condition. Once in a while, you do have to, once every couple of years, you have to service it or whatever the case may be. But if it's stored properly and you keep it in a condition that's appropriate, it'll hold its value and it'll grow. But I mean, you look at a primary resident and all the other ancillary expenses over time that goes into your primary resident, that's never calculated. Should never think of your primary resident as an investment.
Only because of the ancillary costs or because it's a use asset or both?
Both.
So that, you look a little squirmy there, bud.
I'm not. The thing is, the idea for me is that to consider this an investment for me means that it holds or gains value over time without little time spent on it, because there's opportunity costs there, things like that would have to help it increase its value. So
that means you get yourself appraised then, right? You get all your collectibles appraised often?
I don't really have collectibles.
Yes, he does.
There's no conversation.
So if we look in that closet, there's nothing.
A couple shoes. I'm pretty sure we have a picture of what your closet looks like.
Those are definitely not collectibles. I use those things. I'm not reselling them. So you know what? That's a good point, because we've had this discussion, right? I recently purchased some sports memorabilia, and the way I view it is it's not an investment. I bought it because it's something that me and my son can do as a hobby. It's decoration. I think it's really cool. We're huge sports fans. But I definitely intend to sell it one day and get as much money back as possible. I hope I purchased pieces that I believe I will be able to get more than what I put into it. But it's not an investment. If it was an investment, I would have just put my money in something else, because I think it would have gotten a greater return.
Sure.
But as you did all that, though, right, what are you doing? Because as I was reading on, doing research on this and looking and finding all this information, is your plan, what are you doing to be able to make sure that you don't have an outrageous tax bill at the end if you do succeed and sell for more? That's why I was asking if you get your items appraised, because it seems like there's a lot of stuff in order to be able to have an idea of what the value is of these things from time to time.
Well,
Because he won't.
Just kidding. I don't think most people do.
listen, I'll remember the day that I purchased that Wemby jersey on
Listed site.
on some day in July 2024. Or I don't know what price, but I'll remember.
You know,
Galleria?
you have an idea what the price range, plus or minus.
I wish I did. Anyway,
the thing is, to me, it's just because
He's
it's
still
not the
trying,
sole-
folks.
Well, the thing is, to me, it's like just because it's not
trying to move on.
it's not the sole purpose of why you purchased it, but that doesn't mean that it's not considered an investment, because I mean, there's things that we invest in that we know, hey, I'm not going to get the maximum return on this, but it would still be considered something that you're expecting to get more money out of it later on. You know what I mean?
I think he misspoke a little bit. We are trying to maximize net after tax risk adjusted returns. We are.
Just not with these investments.
Yeah. Not for every dollar.
We are trying to maximize
Every
net after tax risk adjusted portfolio.
Yes.
A portfolio. Okay. All right. So I'm glad. All right. Well, here's the next thing I wanted to ask. Okay. Again, we're living in this fantasy world where these are investments. So how would you properly advise a client or allocate a portfolio, or forget a portfolio for that matter, but we're all saving or have investments for a goal or something. Mm-hmm. So if you decided that this was an appropriate investment, how would you go about planning for that or building an entire portfolio?
I would personally make it a small piece of their overall portfolio, let them have it to satisfy them, but overall it'd be a small piece of their overall pie. And I would highly advise them to do a lot of things, a lot of maintenance things, right? All the things that we do to track their cost basis and different things for their taxes and reporting, that's kind of stuff they have to do on their own. So I would just kind of advise them, give them that information and remind them that you need to do a lot of things if you plan on selling it for more money later. That way you don't have a tax hit.
Yeah, for me, it's all about excess cash flow.
Yeah.
If we're already on the road to meeting our goals, or we are already meeting our goals, and we have excess cash flow, excess assets, it's the client's money. And if they want to invest, if they consider investing in things like collectibles or other things, that's fine. But in my opinion, it will underperform other investments. So.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think that it's just, if it is something that a client or an individual wants to get into, understanding that there's prioritization on the other goals that we're working on. And if we do have that additional cash flow and there's that surplus there, and at the end of the day, it's client's money. And if they want to dabble in something that provides not only a tangible growth value, but an intangible value for them as well too, then it's up to them. But yeah, no, there is plenty of evidence out there that does show, in comparison to just the S&P 500, it's an underperforming asset class if we do look at it like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we lose any subscribers, I would like to clarify. We are not saying that you should not invest in collectibles or buy that handbag because it goes really well with your shoes, or buy that watch, or just something, as James said, that's emotional and that's historic in nature, like a gold medal. We're not saying to not do that. We're just saying, as from an investment standpoint, it might be underperforming. But as Leo mentioned, that's okay. Not everything is going to be performing well. In fact, one of the benefits of collectibles and other alternative investments is low correlations. Could end up reducing the risk in an entire portfolio. So make sure you do your due diligence. If you have any questions, please reach out. We really appreciate you listening. That's our 2 cents on your dollars. Please make sure to subscribe and follow.
The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to effect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.